Thank you. I kind of feel like Roseanne Barr when she opened for Rodney Dangerfield, because I'm batting first and then Anatoly's coming, and I threw the hammer also, so mullet, and so I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, nutritional ergogenics for explosive athletes. Ergogenic simply meaning something that enhances performance. That's all it is. But then I really wrote and researched and wrote on nutrition for explosive athletes. I've been in the research and product development industry for many, many decades now, and I've always had a passion for athletics, not bodybuilding per se, or not endurance, because I was a football player and a thrower myself. So I was always interested, and I enjoyed working with coaches, like strength and conditioning coaches that were working with explosive athletes. So that's really what the topic of this is what kind of nutrients are going to improve things like reaction time, starting strength, maximal speed, force, power endurance, even fine motor skills. You know, all these things nutritionally, nutrients can enhance the training result. In this presentation too, I'm going to emphasize that training leads the way. Without good training, even the best supplement is not very effective. It just won't work. So the training is very, very important. I'll touch a little bit on training, and I'm sure you'll have questions on how to interject and combine the training with the supplements as well. Let's see. Oops, did I go too far? Or did I? Oh, there's the first page. Okay. Practical application. Like Joseph said, I'm very practical in looking at taking the science and boiling it down and making it practical. And there's still a lot to learn. Fortunately for me, I was able to travel to the former Soviet Union in the late 80s and then into Russia in particular in the 90s, and I learned a lot from them. They had done a lot of good research. There was a lot of good scientists, some have since passed away, that had done a lot of very, very good research on ergogenics for explosive athletes. So they kind of started my foundation of thinking and knowledge into that. But as Joseph said, in just the last 10 years, there's been really an explosion in scientific research into nutrients and athletic performance. And first thing there is the current, since 1960, going back to 1960, in just the last 10 years, 57% of the research dealing with nutrition in athletes has been in the last 10 years, from all the way back from back in 1960. So that tells you that there's just a great explosion in this science now, and a lot to learn from. So, and in looking at nutrition and elite athletes, which is very exciting, because in the past, a lot of even the early sport nutrition was based on things done in medical research, and then extrapolated into athletics and kind of puffed up, basically. So there were a lot of nutrients that were promoted into the athletic market that, frankly, probably didn't have a lot of effect, but they kind of bridged from the health, cardiovascular health or blood sugar control or whatever into the athletic market. But in the last 10 years, 62% of the research with elite athletes has really exploded. So that's really important because it taught me a lot. I hadn't written a book since a full book anyway, since 1990. I co-authored a book with a researcher named Adaptogenic from Russia, a speed coach. So just writing this book was an eye-opener for me. And like Joseph said, it got me energized as to what the potentials are for athletes. I also found that a number of the things that the Russian athletes were using back in literally the 80s and 90s were now being proven out in American research, which is good. So it was being substantiated. I take a minimalist view on nutrition. In the early days when I formulated and I worked with athletes and teams, we did a lot of things that are common today, like weight gain, protein drinks and with vitamins and minerals and nutrients and stuff in there and all that. I've backed away from that. I'm more of a minimalist now. I like to formulate and look at things as single nutrients or small groups of nutrients, maybe up to 4 or 5. Because I think there's only a certain number of nutrients that really have a bang, and the rest of it's fluff. And some of it actually, and I'll cover this, are what we consider disadaptive nutrients. They actually retard from the training results. So that's, let's see here. I'm trying the right one. The space bar? Oh, that's easy. Easier than this thing. So nutrigenomic biologically active substance categories. Biologically active substances is kind of a Russian term primarily. That just means something that has activity. It means it does something. So I'm going to cover just basically these different categories: anabolic, lipolytic, energetic, adaptogenic, neurologic, and then finally just touch on some of the disadaptive nutrients. So here's the anabolic process, basically. This is the main anabolic process in the body. Some of you may have begun to learn a little bit about this pathway. It ends with a protein structure called TOR. Sometimes it's referred to as mTOR. It stands for mammalian target of rapamycin or mechanistic target of rapamycin. C1 is the active one that's really involved in protein growth. So there's the process. And these are a list of a few things that through the research, just looking at the research and what mechanism they're involved in that activate the TOR pathway. So, by the way, anabolic steroids also work on activating TOR. So, we're so used to steroids and steroid-like effects and everything. Anabolic steroids primarily increase transcription, which is the actual coding of how to make a protein delivered to the ribosome in the cell to then assemble the amino acids and create protein structures. And we're, as coaches, you're probably thinking about muscle, skeletal muscle protein, but there's many proteins in the body, in the brain, in the nervous system, and also especially enzyme proteins that are very important for athletic performance. So the TOR pathway is involved in all of those. And these different nutrients have somewhat of a home. Now there's some cross pollination into some of the other categories. Certainly creatine monohydrate into the energetic category. Omega-3 works on a number of different levels. Trimethylglycine is one that I've used actually for many years. A lot of people don't know what TMG is or how it functions, but it actually works on the TORC1 pathway as well. So I have formulated with that for quite a bit. I like it a lot. Let's see, omega-3s. So omega-3s, we're thinking about cardiovascular health and all that. What's the big deal with omega-3s? But I've used omega-3s with athletes for a long time. I always thought initially that knowing that omega-3s are part of cell structures, the fatty portion of cell structures, that it's very important for athletes to be in line with efficient transfer of information in the nervous system, and also the anabolic process, that the cell work properly and be pliable. And really that's where omega-3s fit in. So they have an effect also on TORC1. Phosphatidic acid is a specific fatty acid that's produced. It's produced in muscle contractions. You might have begun to see some supplements on the market with phosphatidic acid in them. It's brand new, and the dosage is about 750 milligrams of phosphatidic acid a day. Some companies, there's only a couple companies selling it right now because the company that makes it is an Italian company, and I think their production is limited, so they've kind of slowly introduced it to the world market. But it can be, I think, an effective nutrient as well. Knowing that it's triggered during exercise, though, a lot of companies are selling it as a pre-workout supplement. I think it may have a better application in post-workout because during the workout we're actually producing it. So I don't know how amplifying that, there's probably a ceiling. And every nutrient has a ceiling rate, a level, okay? So more of something doesn't necessarily make it any better, taking more of it. The other one, mineral oretates, I've used those a lot. I don't know if many of you know a lot about oretates or mineral oretates. Mineral oretates just stands for some kind of a mineral. Usually it's potassium, calcium, zinc, magnesium, bound to orotic acid. And this is a very good acid that a group that does two things. It takes the mineral composition of the dimer and it brings it into cells very efficiently. So like for instance, potassium orotate and magnesium orotate were used a lot by research many years ago for cardiovascular health of energizing cell structures. So I think that a lot of athletes are quite deficient generally in magnesium and potassium. Generally, the U.S. population as a whole is deficient in these two minerals. So especially potassium as well. So I think it's important to have some good delivery systems for those nutrients. So orotates is one. There's others, aspartates and succinates and malates and citrates, and they can all be useful. They can all be functional. But the orotates have a specific function in that the orotic acid is a very good activator of the mTOR pathway. So it's anabolic. And I learned about orotates actually in Bulgaria in 1988 when I was visiting there and with their national weightlifting team. I was in a group of strength coaches that they were interested in the training side, which I was too, but I was also interested in the nutrition and the restorative side of things. So I had the opportunity to visit with the team physicians in both there and in Russia and discuss a lot of the nutrients that they were using. And magnesium and potassium orotates were some of those things that they were using for recovery of athletes and creating an anabolic effect. Taurine is another one. I've never worked with taurine. I haven't yet, but it also triggers this pathway. So there's some good new science. Again, a lot of this is new science that we'll be explaining. It's not old stuff. It's just in the last 10 years. So amino acids. Most of the nutrition in the industry is made for bodybuilders, or it's for endurance athletes. Very little specifically for speed strength athletes in the market. Why? Because it's a bigger market, bodybuilders, people that just want to get in shape and things like that. So there's just a lot of misinformation in the sport nutrition market about things, and amino acids and proteins in particular. Whey protein is my favorite protein to use for athletes because it's high in an amino acid called leucine, and leucine is a very good trigger for the TOR pathway. So it's always been good. It tastes good. It mixes well. That's not to say that an athlete that wants to take a vegetarian protein or something that it's bad. Some companies have added actually branched chain amino acids, which leucine is a part of, to their vegetable formula, which is rice protein or pea protein or things like that. So those can be okay too, but I prefer whey and in a 20-gram amount. Okay, why 20 grams? There was some research done a few years ago by a very, very good anabolic protein researcher in the UK named Michael Rennie, and he developed a concept called muscle full. And what he found was that looking at when you gave people whey protein or other protein structures that were high in indispensable amino acids. So whey has, which comes from cheese making from dairy cows, has about 50% of it is indispensable amino acids, meaning the body can't make them. The body has to convert them and get them actually in the diet. So those are really important amino acids. And so about 10 grams of a 20-gram serving of whey protein is indispensable amino acids. And what he found was that above that level, the anabolic process really wasn't activated. Why? Because the muscle's full. It's got enough. It's busy. Okay. Now, big guy, maybe 25 grams. Okay. But I've seen some of these bodybuilding supplements that have literally, they look like laundry scoops. I mean, they're like 40 grams, 60 grams, and whatnot in a serving size. It doesn't make any sense. So if you stick with your athletes with, say, a 20-gram amount of good quality protein, and it could be, chicken and fish and other things too, but kind of something in the diet like that, that will seem to be very efficient. You can also repeat that every 3 hours. So we know that, and again, I recommend whey protein primarily post-workout, about a half an hour to an hour after the workout. There's a little bit of a catabolic to anabolic shift in the process, so introducing it earlier than that may be a little bit efficient, but it's going to be more maximally efficient, say a half an hour after that's kind of that catabolic cycle is toned down and we're transitioning into an anabolic state. So 20 grams, say a half an hour after the workout. You can repeat that again in about 3 hours if you want. And again, that could be another dose of a shake or something like that with whey protein, or it could be a chicken sandwich or something. As long as you know you're getting some protein, you can still milk that anabolic process. And we now know that you can milk that up to 24 hours in the future. So it can be very effective as well. So and for protein growth, recovery, things like that. So here's leucine, another compound that's produced from leucine, and is hydroxymethylbutyrate. You all probably know what HMB is. It's been on the market for quite a while. HMB is also very effective. It's pricier than leucine, but I think it has some good applications. So either or. Of course, leucine is in whey, so you're getting a good amount in whey, 2 grams. You could probably stretch that a little bit if you want to take a little HMB or something, or a little additional leucine to kick it up a little bit. That would probably be okay. But it also turns on the TOR pathway. And you'll kind of see another pathway here to the right. It's called AMPK. I don't know if you know what AMPK is, but it's an enzyme pathway that is actually blunts the TOR response. So, and I'll touch on this further, but so when AMPK rises, TOR decreases, and vice versa. TOR also is a growth pathway. In athletics, typically it's muscle growth, because we're exercising, we're burning calories and whatnot. But you can also have TOR activated in somebody that's obese, because it's growth, right? It's just growing fat, not muscle protein. So TOR can be very busy growing things maybe that we don't want as well. So, but in young athletes, in their competitive age group, turning TOR on is actually a good thing for them. Here's trimethylglycine. This is just some of those that I kind of touched on earlier a little bit, power, strength, endurance. This is the pathway, about 1.25 grams twice a day. That's the ceiling. I don't think you need to go any higher than that. A lot of these nutrients, too, more is not necessarily better. That's plenty for TMG. Let's see. Phosphatidic acid, again, I referred to that 750 milligram daily. This is the brand name for phosphatidic acid. It's called Mediator. It's by a company called Indina out of Italy. Or excuse me, not Indina. It's that's another company I work with. It'll come to me. Anyway, if you Google Mediator, you'll find it on there. Oh, ChemiNutra. ChemiNutra is the company, and it's 50% PA. So to get 750 milligrams, you're going to have to double that amount. So it's useful at that. It's been studied with I think athletes now, and it has an anabolic effect. So oral use. Mineral orotates. It also increases PPAR fatty acid utilization, which kind of interesting. It kind of has a dual effect a little bit. PPAR alpha is a fat burning pathway also. It's not AMPK, but it's kind of tied to it in some ways. So it does have some leaning effects to it, but it's also involved really in protein synthesis in RNA and DNA. Which is why probably it was used in the East Bloc. It's a great complement for anabolics. Steroids, because it amplifies everything in the anabolic effect. So that one. Creatine monohydrate. Okay, before Holtman, Harris, and Greenhalgh, these were the pioneers of creatine monohydrate. Before those guys, they were the first really to publish outside of the East Bloc on it, and which kind of picked up steam, and a company called EAS, which I knew all the guys that started EAS, Ed Bird and Anthony Omada and whatnot, and they took it and really made it into a big thing. And it has some great applications, but before them there was there was Volkov and Viru, and I'll tell you a little quick story about that. I was at a symposium in St. Petersburg, which was Leningrad back in 1988, and we were driving in town from doing a clinic, and I was with Nikolai Volkov and Adku Viru, and we were just chatting, and I said, look, I've got a new supplement with amino acids I'm trying to put together, and what would you guys add to that to make it more anabolic? And they said creatine monohydrate. I had no idea what it was. So I came back, researched it a little bit. There really wasn't a lot of published research, at least with athletes on it yet. There was ZIP, because Holtman and Harris and those guys really started their work, R&D on on it in the 89 and 90. But I added it to a supplement, and we started to work with it a little bit back then. So it has a long history of use in the U.S. And if you have any questions on any of these nutrients, I'll take questions as well. So increased peak torque and reduced deceleration, energetic, anabolic, neurologic. So it has a lot of effects. It's even good for people that have had brain trauma, have had concussions and things like that. I do recommend it for a pre-concussion period, not as a preventive necessarily, but just to be in there, and as a post supplement as well. It's been traditionally used 20 grams a day at the top end, if you want to get a bolus in there really quick to elevate its amount, or as a 5-gram amount over a number of days. I prefer the 5-gram amount. I've always generally used that, but 20 grams is fine for a short window. 10% or more users are non-responders. This is a case with a lot of supplements. What we find is that if a supplement, if an individual is a non-responder to a supplement, oftentimes they're a non-responder to other supplements. For whatever reason, nobody really knows exactly. Maybe their receptor sites are a little bit different or whatever, but in general, it's about 10%. Sometimes people say up to 30, but I've found generally about 1 in 10 athletes. In that case, we've actually bumped it up a little bit, or we've added some high glycemic carbs to help introduce it a little more efficiently. So that's creatine. There's other forms of creatine, of course, on the market now. Over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of different versions of creatine on the market. A lot of that, I think, is based on marketing, not necessarily efficiency of the nutrient. I still prefer creatine monohydrate. It works. It's been shown to work. I haven't seen anything really any better. Some things are actually worse, so I just stick with creatine monohydrate. Let's see, other anabolics. I've done a lot of work with ectosterones. Some of you may, in the past, have heard of ectosteroid or 20-hydroxyectosterone or ectostan or things like that. This has been used. It's still a medicine, actually, in Russia for cardiac patients, especially for recovery for its anabolic activity, its restorative ability. But it's really only been in the last few years that some of the mechanisms of it have been discovered, and it was recently discovered that it does, in fact, increase calcium ion activity and then leads to mTOR activity. So it's another adjunct to training, another piece of the puzzle, basically. Ursotic acid's one I work with quite a bit in a lot of different ways, and it also activates the mTOR pathway. Ursotic acid comes from like rosemary and thyme. My undergrad degree is in plant science, so I tend to work a lot with plant compounds. So I like ursotic acid for that. Taurine, again, back to that same mTOR pathway also. Lipolytics. Okay, so here's kind of that, what I was talking to you before about, let's get to the side for a little bit, about the fat-burning pathway, if you will. Athletes don't obviously have to be, most athletes don't have to be so concerned with fat burning. They usually have a trouble keeping weight on and keeping their strength up. So, but some athletes do have that issue. My research now a lot is in older individuals, 45, 50, 60 years of age that have extra fat, and so that's a lot of my study. So I work a lot in the MPK pathway. It increases a thing called PGC1 alpha, which increases mitochondrial biogenesis and also angiogenesis. But mitochondrial biogenesis specifically is important because the mitochondria is where fat's burned, where we get our energy, where we get our ATP. So it's important that it's active and performing properly. As we get older, our mitochondria don't work so hot, so we want to activate that. Even in a young athlete, though, if a young athlete's overweight, as far as fat weight, or non-functional weight, there's things you can do exercise-wise, diet-wise, and nutrition-wise that can activate this AMPK pathway to help them lose that extra body fat more efficiently. So we've got AMPK, SIRT1, PGC1 alpha. I'm not going to, these are terms, but they really mean the fat-burning pathway. SIRT1 is another pathway. It was researched a few years ago, resveratrol, if you've heard of resveratrol. Resveratrol has been tied to turning on SIRT1 pathway, which also then in turn turns on PGC1 alpha. PGC1 alpha, and that area is kind of like the culmination that triggers the mitochondrial activity. So, so there's a number of things that turn this pathway on nicely. Polyphenols from plants. Polyphenols, which is what I work with a lot, are things primarily of color in plants. And so things like the blue of a blueberry or the red of a red-skinned apple or the green of green tea or things. A lot of things of color and flavor in plants. So the EGCG from green tea. Fucoxanthin is from brown seaweed primarily. Proanthocyanins from grapeseed. Grapeseed is pretty popular. Chlorogenic acid, which is kind of a new thing. Dr. Oz, had chlorogenic acid on his show and for weight loss and all that. And it has some good effects as well. There's Veratrol, acetic acid. Acetic acid's great. It's in vinegar, apple cider vinegar. It works well. And other things from like purple corn, black rice or purple rice, things like that. So those can be used as a nutritional support for a fat-burning cycle, for instance. Just some of many. Adaptogenics. Okay, so you've all probably heard of eleuthero or Siberian ginseng, rhodiola. You've probably heard of that by now too. Withania, which Indians call ashwagandha. These are all adaptogens are really tonics. They normalize the body's metabolism. They keep it kind of in a healthy zone. They have a lot of compounds in them that kind of create a little bit of a stress response process that makes the body adapt to that and stay in a healthy zone. So ectosterones as well, same as a process function here as well. Ginseng, I like American ginseng a lot. It's got a number of effects, positive effects for athletes in it. Chinese Korean is a little sharper. It's a little more on the hot side, so American ginseng works well. Fafi I've worked with before. Fafi actually has some ectosteroids in it, so we used to use that a lot with, we used to isolate that down and get to higher ectosteroid content. And Aurelia is another primarily Russian plant, so Soviet plant as well. Okay, so neurologics. This is an area that I'm really excited about because this really directly relates to speed strength athletes. If the nervous system doesn't work properly, if from the brain to the visual to the muscle to the nerve to the spinal cord to the muscle itself, that doesn't all fire explosively, then we don't have an explosive force. So trying to look at something nutritionally that will improve the neurologic, neuromuscular, for instance, process. So we have, where is this all occurring? It's occurring at the nerve junction, neuromuscular junction, the receptors there, the muscle cell, nerve cell ending, all connecting, and that inside this junction here is the acetylcholine comes into this receptor, and basically it's kind of like the spark plug that transfers the impulse from the nervous system to the muscle to make it do what it needs to do. If the acetylcholine is not in the synapse, then we'd have no muscle firing. So as a body fatigues, that tends to decrease as well. So new research is how to activate that process. So here we go. One of those pathways that we want to look at in the neuromuscular response category would be the acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. It's a fancy word, but it simply means that acetylcholinesterase is an enzyme that actually breaks down acetylcholine in the synapse. And it's important because the body is yin-yang. The body has to be in balance. It's not like we've always got to be anabolic and we can't be catabolic. They have to work together. But the acetylcholinesterase is that enzyme that blunts the acetylcholine response and dumbs down the explosive force, really. So we want to look at, we're looking at things that may influence the acetylcholinesterase. How can we inhibit it? Okay, and this is used a lot in research. A lot of research has been done on individuals for cognitive functions because cognition is nerve transmission and memory and whatnot. So a lot of these have been well studied for that. Ginkgo, ginkgo biloba, we kind of know, a lot of people know that's for memory and things like that. Well, this is one of the reasons why ginkgo works. It also is a good vasodilator, and and whatnot as well. It's got some antioxidant stimulating power in the body, but it also is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. Bacopa is common for memory as well. Rosemary is, I use rosemary a fair amount. It has some good active compounds. Galanthus nivalis has an active compound in it called galanthamine. I've used it a little bit in the past. It's a little tricky to get good quality galanthamine, and it's not as commonly accessible anymore. Some stuff comes from China, some stuff came from the East Bloc. Huperzine serrata is another one. It has huperzine in it, huperzine A, B, and C, so it's also another good acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. So again, what we want to do, if we want to inhibit this enzyme from breaking down the acetylcholine, we add some kind of nutrient into the training protocol for that to keep it in the synapse, acetylcholine in the synapse longer. Here's acetylcholine booster. So one thing is to keep it in the synapse, the other thing is to feed it, to make it make more of it. Okay, so it's acetylcholine stimulating nutrients are in all four of these things, but really lecithin and choline are almost useless. They don't have the kick that it needs to really boost the acetylcholine level. Citicholine, which a lot of it comes from Japan, it can be useful, but not as much as alpha-GPC. And some of you may be familiar with alpha-GPC. Chemi, the same company that does the PA, phosphatidic acid, also makes a good alpha-GPC. They've had it on the market for years, and it does okay sales-wise, but I don't think it's underappreciated, I think, as far as what it can do. A lot of it was promoted early on because it was tied to increasing growth hormone response. So that's kind of, it was the original marketing direction, but it's a great one at boosting acetylcholine levels in the synapse, so we use that a lot. So now we have energetics. Here's the energetics, ATP. That's the bad boy. That's the final energy currency that makes things happen. Certainly things in energy, just eating enough calories. A lot of athletes just need, not a lot, but a good amount of athletes simply need to eat enough good quality calories, get enough good foods and things and nutrition in their diet. That way they'll have the energy to process in the mitochondria and make more ATP. So reducing fatigue, high force output is the goal. Recovery after exhaustive exercise is the goal. Here's a couple nutrients. I've not worked with them yet, but they have some interesting science. They're actually, L-of-ATP is a nutrient that stimulates ATP production. I haven't followed it enough to really know the mechanism that it does that, but it seems to, I know the people that did the research on it, they're good scientists and seem to have some good application. Peak ATP is actually ATP itself in a special delivery system. The molecule generally is not absorbed very well, but in that form I think it might have some application. And those are just for cell energetics, increasing energy. Let's see, disadaptive. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of this part of the slides. Let me put this down. This is a really important area to talk about. And I was amazed because I had used some of these disadaptive, what I call disadaptive nutrients in formulas for years. But the new science is now showing that too much, and again I'll talk about what's too much, but too much vitamin C, vitamin E, N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine is a precursor to glutathione, which is a master cellular antioxidant. Lipoic acid is an antioxidant replenisher. It's both fat and water, both C and E replenisher in the body. And they have applications, okay, but athletics, if you think about exercise, athletics and exercise is creating a stress response. So we exercise to create a stress. And then in recovery, we adapt to that. The body says, man, I didn't like what you just did to me. I'm going to get bigger, stronger, faster, quicker. My reaction's going to get better, whatever your training protocol pushed in whatever directions. It was a stress, and the body responds to that. And we all know that's a certain zone. You can't just beat an athlete for hours and hours and hours and have them restore and make gains. They'll burn out. So we want to overreach enough to get a result, but not overtrain. So These nutrients have been used in formulas, and you'll find them a lot in weight gain powders and things like that, and other drinks and whatnot, and in our diet and in our cereal and in our smart water and blah, 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 and they're everywhere, okay? Because we've been told that these are antioxidants and they are important for our health. So even sport nutrition companies have kind of over the years just added them to their formula. Not really knowing if they do anything, because nobody really studied it that much. But we figured, well, everybody wanted a vitamin and mineral premix in the formula, so let's just add one. So there you get it. You'll get the C, you'll get the E. Sometimes you'll get these other two fancy ones below that, but especially the C and the E. Now, what happens? We create a stress response. There are certain stress signals that create the response, the adaptive response. Those signals are what we call RONs, or reactive oxygen and nitrogen species. You might refer to them as free radicals. Okay, there's heat shock proteins, there's inflammatory cytokines. All of these things are kind of in a big soup of the stress of the exercise. For instance, interleukin-6 is a cytokine, and in general, in most people, high interleukin-6 would actually be a negative. It would probably contribute to inflammation and chronic health conditions. But athletes produce gobs of it, so athletes are a little bit different. Athletes produce it because it's a signaling mechanism for the adaptive response, and it's absolutely necessary. Well, when you take C and E, you blunt the stress response. You'll blunt the stress response somewhat in the inflammatory cytokine category, but especially in the RONs, in the reactive oxygen and nitrogen. And you don't want to do that, because that is your signaling mechanism for adaptation. And so now the new science, and literally the science is probably 3 or 4 years old, and it's accelerating in its scope, is showing that those things, what we consider antioxidants, are blunting the stress response to training. So we don't want a lot of them. So how much do we want to take? Well, I'm a minimalist in a way, that I don't like to do anything more than I absolutely have to, and knowing that 60 milligrams of vitamin C a day is probably enough for most people, maybe 100 milligrams or something. So do the math, and you'll have to look and see if you've got any products that athletes are taking or whatever that have high C. I would prefer to get them from a base diet, a lot of nuts and seeds, and of course C, citrus and kiwi fruit, things like that. They're high in C. I like C in a natural state better than a synthetic state. Most ascorbic acid now is made in China. It's made in 2 factories. There's only 3 factories in the world that make vitamin C. 2 are in China, one's in Scotland, and Scotland's small facility. So, so the synthetic basic vitamin C that primarily comes from corn digest is kind of sharp. I prefer C from a natural C form, like acerola or camu camu or something like that. It's in the herbal extract, but it's not an isolate. And the other things actually in the extract, the polyphenols and other things, can be beneficial to health anyway. So a small amount of that. So vitamin E, probably wouldn't do any supplemental vitamin E at all generally. Just eat well. Good. Find foods high in E. A lot of seeds and berries and things like that have a good amount of E in them as well. So that's the disadaptive nutrients, and I think it's going to be a big thing in the future, because we want to make sure that we're training athletes and that we're not interfering with the adaptive response. It's kind of common sense. So here's the final slide. Always remember, the best nutritional ergogenics are only as good as the training plan. And supplement companies are obviously interested in selling supplements. And usually they talk about how great the supplement is and how it's going to do this and how it's going to do that. But it all comes down to the training. And so even the best supplement, we've talked about a number of nutrients here that can have some positive benefits, but they have to be used with the right training plan. And that's what Anatoly and others are going to talk about, is the training side of it. I didn't touch a lot on diet and nutrition, but I'd be glad to open it up to questions on any of the things that we touched on so far, if you have any questions. Good? Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that there's any nutritional program that's best to augment and take advantage of these ergogenic aids? So like alkaline diet, intermittent fasting. Is there any particular nutrition program that enhances?
It depends a little bit on what your direction is, because if you want to be anabolic, you don't want to intermittent fast so much. Intermittent fasting is more for the AMPK pathway. It's a stress response also. The body says, God, I don't have any energy. What are we going to do? Hey, mitochondria, can you make more? Can you burn some fat for me? And so intermittent fasting is very effective for that. But if it's on the anabolic side, you want to feed, and repetitive throughout the day, kind of feeding. Again, not to overfeed, not to get bloated and fat and everything. But yeah, so I think just a good base diet of fruits, vegetables. I like organic better because it tends to have more active substances in it. But fruits and vegetables, certainly, nuts and seeds, and then lean meats, things like that. Not a lot of, it's the same stuff you guys always work on. Don't eat a lot of junk food, don't eat a lot of donuts and fatty foods and fried stuff and all that jazz, because really those interfere probably a lot with the anabolic process as well. So just eat clean, and then you can add some nutritional supplements in there if you want. Turn on the certain pathways. Yeah.
What would you recommend as a guide to be sure that the supplements that you are taking are valid? You can go to Walmart and buy anything. So what would you recommend as like a guide to how you can ensure that what you're getting is actually legitimate?
Well, good question. There's obviously hundreds and hundreds of supplements on the market, and I tell people that and I've worked in the supplement industry, so I know how it's played. I know how it works, and it's the business of selling supplements first. Okay, so if something comes out, a little bit of science here, a little bit of something here, and then it's extrapolated, and all of a sudden it becomes the greatest thing that ever discovered, and blah blah blah. So how you tell whether you're getting quality from one company or another. Today, the federal regulations on manufacturing supplements is a lot more dialed in. It's called GMP, or Good Manufacturing Practices. And a company that really is following GMP carefully is doing a lot of things to ensure that what you're buying is high quality. From initial receiving of raw materials to analyzing those to make sure they're good. If you get something from China, for instance, you got to test it. You definitely got to test it, because the Chinese have been known for adulteration and whatnot. You got to test it, make sure it's got the right thing and not the wrong thing in it. So that's the starting material, and then using the process to make it and everything, and then having the active compound in there. So some of it's, a lot of companies that are small, and there's nothing wrong with small companies. I've started a number of small companies and built them into bigger companies that they don't do their own manufacturing. A lot of companies today don't make their own supplements. They have a contract manufacturer make them for them. So the contract manufacturer needs to be GMP certified for it to really be safe and have the nutrient in there that you want and whatnot. But it's just more economical for most manufacturers, especially small ones. The GMP regulations now are extreme. They probably cost a company $1 million just to develop their protocols and programs. So it's not for a small company. They'll job it out. So, any other questions? Yeah.
You recommend slightly off as far as creatine goes at all, or I know that you said the big load in the beginning with the 20 grams and then 5 grams after that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you spend any time off of it completely?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I think it's okay. It probably depends on your training cycles and where you want it to ebb and flow. But the creatine monohydrate will decrease the production of creatine in the body. There's no doubt. It's the same with testosterone. If you take anabolic steroids, it will decrease your testosterone production. It comes back. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just replaces. So you're here at one point, and all of a sudden you're taking creatine monohydrate, and now you're here. This drops to here. So what? And when you come off of that, this comes back up. So it balances out pretty good. So I don't think it's super critical, but I intuitively probably keep the body a little off balance a little bit. I call all these things, and a lot of things that are given to athletes, goodies. Okay. One thing I didn't cover was pre-workout supplements, post-workout supplements, what's the difference and all that. I rarely use any pre-workout supplements. I don't do them. Why? They're the goodies. well, I'm going to take that carb drink, or I'm going to take that thing, and I'm going to make, why? I'm going to make my workout easier. Stupid, right? Want to make the workout hard. The workout should be harder than the competition. You should overreach. And then when you get into competition, the body goes, hey, I've been here, I can handle this. I've been in competitions where I was jacked up and excited and everything, and had terrible results because it was just, I didn't train the way I competed. You have to train harder than you compete. Push it. And so if you start giving the body goodies in there, it interferes with that. I really think it will interfere with that adaptive response. I think we're even, just looking at that vitamin C, vitamin E, and everything, those are probably just the tip of the iceberg. There are other things that may also interfere with that adaptive response in that pathway. Oh, NSAIDs will, anti-inflammatory drugs will interfere with the adaptive response pathway too, because they interfere with the inflammatory response. Inflammatory response and the cytokines are signaling molecules for adaptation. So when we all of a sudden load a bunch of that stuff in there, then we don't get the adaptive response we want. That's not to say, it's again, yin yang. It's not to say, well, we can't take any anti-inflammatories, can't do any turmeric or anything like that that has natural inflammatory qualities to it. No, but you just have to be conscious that it may interfere somewhat with the adaptive response. If we're trying to restore from an injury or something like that, that's a different thing. So, yeah.
I got another one. You mentioned that you can take a protein every 3 hours for up to 24 hours. So any of the other ergogenic aids, is there any time constraint on those? There's obviously like an optimal range within an hour of post-workout.
Yeah, so I'm not, in the early days, it was, well, you got to take your protein right after the workout. How are we doing on time, Jay? Are we doing okay?
Yeah, if you want to answer this, then get up for a minute and we come back,
Yeah,
that'll be good.
okay. In the early days, even with like protein and things like, well, you got to take this right after the workout because you're going to be anabolic and you got to ramp up and all that. There's again that catabolic to anabolic swing, and it's a little bit different with every athlete. So, but in general, half an hour to an hour or so, generally until you start to introduce some ergogenics, whether it's whey protein or it's TMG or it's orotates. And those, again, could be taken, those probably should be taken, like the TMG was like 1.25 grams or 1.5 grams. They should be taken spread out, not to overload. The body can, again, only handle so much of those nutrients as well. So you can cycle those along in there with the anabolic phase. Again, the anabolic phase can be extended, so you can get more bang for your training buck by adding the right nutrients in there in sequence to extend the anabolic phase. But there's no magic. Nobody knows yet, and everybody's different anyway. So what that is, but half an hour after maybe your whey protein, maybe a little creatine. Creatine can be taken anytime. Creatine stores load, and then they're just there. So you can take that in the morning, evening, whatever. It doesn't seem to matter a whole lot. I would take it before the workout, just so it's in there. But you can take it post-workout too. It'll be fine for recovery and whatnot. And then the other ones like the mineral orotates, the TMG, the phosphatidic acid, a couple times, 3 times, whatever kind of thing. You guys have questions on certain things. And Anatoly has some information on creatine he'd like to share as well, so I'll ask him to interject some stuff at the close. There was a question during the intermission about protein a little bit on this whole 25 grams or more. The question was, well, does a really big guy stick to the 20 grams? And I think intuitively not. I mean, they're bigger. They probably need a little more, but I don't think it's a huge jump from 20 to 30 or 40. I think it's maybe up to 25 grams at a time. The other thing is that proteins are expensive, right? We all know that whey protein is not cheap. It comes in 2 forms. It comes in an isolate form primarily and in a concentrate form. If you don't know the difference in that, the isolate form has kind of been touted as the Ferrari of whey, more pure and whatnot. And there's something to say for that it's been purified more to maybe 95 or 96% whey peptides. But the concentrate is also biologically active. It works just as well. Some people do better on one or the other. I've seen that a little bit. Had people that didn't do as well on the isolate that did better on the concentrate. So it's really more of how much protein you're getting for how much you're spending. And I oftentimes do a math calculation for that. I'll look at a container and say, okay, there's X amount of grams in the container, and this is the price, and then divide that into the price to see what I'm paying per gram and what kind of a deal I'm getting. And then it comes down to the quality of the manufacturer and what you're comfortable with and whatnot. So there's a lot of good quality whey proteins on the market today. So you shouldn't have a problem finding a good quality one. I thought a little bit about adaptogens too. You know, the Russians, Soviet system had used a lot of adaptogens. It was in the 80s, and when I was training and competing in the 80s, and then into the 90s, there was a lot of kind of mystery behind all these different compounds and whatnot. Adaptogens, things like eleuthero or Siberian ginseng or rhodiola or whatnot, were used and are still used on occasion by athletes. Generally, they're used more in the winter months because of their ability to ward off colds and flu and things like that. They actually increase the stress response of the body. So they're stress mimetics. They increase stress themselves. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because in a certain zone of a plant-based compound that creates a stress, the body then adapts to that. But it's like anything. Echinacea is used in the winter months too against colds and as a preventive and whatnot. Echinacea is another stress compound. It creates a stress that the body then adapts to. And so if you take too much of echinacea or you take too much of an adaptogen, more is not better. You're overblown. There's a concept in science now called hormesis. Most people in the scientific community don't even know a lot about hormesis, but hormesis simply means something in a small amount is beneficial to the organism or the body, but in a larger dose, that same compound is toxic to the body. And that applies to a lot of things in life. I mean, air is beneficial to us. We were surviving. Too much oxygen could actually be toxic. Water is beneficial. Too much water can kill us. Exercise in a certain zone is beneficial, but excessive exercise can be detrimental. The same with plant-based compounds or anything you ingest or whatnot. More is not always better. A lot of these compounds that I referred to work in a specific zone, and so they have to be kind of maintained in that dosage zone. And we don't know all yet on especially the adaptogens and whatnot. It depends on a number of things. It depends on the growing condition. It depends on the actives in there, how it's standardized. There's a lot of things. But just so you're aware that more of something is not always fruitful for your training. Any other questions that you thought of during the break at all for me? Yeah.
Actually, concerning the dosage and whether or not what's in the bottle is actually in the bottle, there's a website out there called consumerlife.com, which is a non-profit, doesn't take advertising, and they will tell you first of all whether the supplement is effective or does what they claim it does, and also by brand, not every brand, but a lot of brands will tell you whether it's got what's in the bottle is actually
Yeah, and that's a good site. I'm familiar with it. There's a little caveat to all of that, though, that sometimes the lay industry tests things that that's not our specific focus. But like, for instance, if we're testing creatine monohydrate, that should be a no-brainer. It's either in there or it's not, and I agree with that. Some plant-based compounds have some isolates and some things in it that they may not even test for. And there's a lot of things in plant chemistry that we don't know. We do know that there's thousands of compounds in there, and they're kind of synergistic. So to just have an isolate may be a good thing or may not. But that's true. You can check sites like that maybe give you a little bit extra guidance, that's for sure. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Talk about the opportunities you see using it with reactive stuff, and you and I have already started to kind of experiment with it. But the transient nature of it, you had talked about, it can kind of come and go, and you use some other nutrients in there to kind of hold it into the system longer, so that it's effective over a long period of time. Can you talk about that kind of, if someone's experimenting with it, kind of the idea there, because otherwise I would have been totally in the dark.
Yeah, okay, so that's important. And I didn't cover it. Yosef's right. The timing, alpha-GPC is one that I have worked with for a long time, but more as a neuromuscular response compound. We've worked on different formulas with that, as well as blunting the acetylcholine esterase effect to again, maintain the acetylcholine in the synapse longer. And what we found was that the improvements in results, and you can talk to him about that, but the explosiveness results have been very dramatic and even long-lasting, which is kind of surprising, but I think the body has started to adapt to the higher level of performance. Alpha-GPC, knowing that it loads the synapse with acetylcholine, really, I think that the best time to use that is as a pre-workout supplement. So I said before, I'm not a big fan of pre-workout supplements. This is the exception to that because it is one that loads the acetylcholine in the synapse. And so, and if you're using explosiveness training like shock methods of plyometrics or things like that, or using max lifts, or you're in competition, and you're activating again the maximum amount of neural impulse to muscle, then it can be of benefit. You want to take it before the workout. It has a short half-life, short life in that it you take this kind of thing about half an hour before the workout or competition, and it will last about 2-3 hours, and then it's done. But we also found that it has some residual effect. In other words, the athlete improved a certain percentage in the workout using it, then went a few days, and then also continued to improve even without taking it. So that was kind of an interesting thing. There may be some just neuromuscular holdover there of some kind. We don't know yet. Yeah.
Do any of these things you've been talking about, do they cause a false positive for drug testing?
No, they should. No, they should not. Nothing that I've discussed here would be on a banned list. They're not really a stimulant at all either. But they're certainly not in the hormonal milieu. They're working more on the anabolic pathway in a nutritive direction, and on the energetic pathway and on the neuromuscular pathway. So, yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
I had somebody ask me earlier this month about colostrum.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen anything special with colostrum beyond the
Colostrum is, so for those of you who don't know what colostrum is, it's the first milking of a pregnant dairy cow, and it has a lot of immune factors in it. So it's really claimed to fame as immunological. So it's good for, it has some benefits to athletes, I think, because it's a protein structure, especially during maybe the periods of overreaching and in wintertime when athletes are more susceptible to viruses or colds or flus or things like that. It may have some boosting effects for that. The dairy cow makes it because when the calf is first feeding, it basically gives the calf a boost of immune response. So that's where its benefit comes in. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
Well, then maybe we get into dive in a little bit more from the book, where we get into the specific aspects.
Sure. Let's go. Let me see. I finally figured out how to work this. You got to be on this side of the table. Hey, it works. Again, the book is kind of a culmination of the latest science. I wrote it just a few months ago. Collected a lot of new research. I wrote the book to be user-friendly too, and if you want, there's a copy of it back there. But I didn't want it to be some big, giant, thick book that you look through it and then afterwards you said, huh? I wanted you to kind of get it, and also I included the scientific references in the sections, not at the back of the book, so that it's right there. So if you wanted to follow up and look at a science paper or something like that, some people have more interest in that. I certainly do. I like to follow the chain. Basically, okay, this guy's talking about this, where did it come from, boom, 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 and then what it may lead to. That scientist may have also studied other things that might be of interest to you. So that's important. So a lot of the new science, again, just the last 10 years. I mean, it's really blown up big time. And that also tells you that it's very important to stay current with science and how it may improve your athlete's performance, because it's ever-changing, new things come out all the time. But I will also say that if a supplement, if you're looking at using a supplement, that you also look at some of the science behind it and see if it makes sense to you. Now, you're not all scientists, so that's fine, and that's not a problem. But you should have some knowledge of what the thing is. Again, rather than taking the nutrition company's word for it that it's the best thing on the planet. It may be very good. Okay, I'm not taking it away from, there's a lot of good companies out there that make some good things, but actually there are probably more companies that make junk. And so buyer beware. You have to be prepared to use things. Again, I take a minimalist view. I don't like to use a lot of things because I think a lot of things work. I think a few things do what we want them to do, and they're good enough. They do what we want to do. We don't want to create additional noise in the metabolic process. So that the science is expanded. A lot on, again, on elite athletes has been very fruitful because we're now seeing what it does, what these nutrients do in an elite athlete. Now, we had a question during the break also, and I was thinking a little bit, because I didn't go into the differences between nutrients for like a young athlete or an intermediate athlete and an elite athlete. And there are some subtle differences. What we found from a number of years is that a nutrient that for a less experienced athlete or intermediate athlete may not work in a very, very elite athlete. And I'm talking about like a professional athlete. Like if we tested a certain nutrient on a college soccer player and we tested it on a professional football player, we may not see the same result. So in some cases we had to increase the dosage a little bit, sometimes we had to add a catalyst to it, and sometimes it just didn't flat out work. And that's just because that elite athlete is in a very narrow band. Okay, a 2% gain for that guy, it may be a huge deal. But if your other young athlete came to you and said, "Oh, I just got a 2% gain this year," you may say, "Well, why haven't you been training?" So it's all relative to taking in context for that. So let's see what else we have. Again, back to this TOR pathway. This is the major anabolic pathway. This doesn't work. If this isn't on, you're not making any any muscle proteins or any enzymes. So it's essential. And these were just some of those nutrients, the primary ones that I think I would target in on as far as enhancing this TOR effect. Again, whey protein, getting a lot of amino acids from that, but taking additional BCAAs, especially leucine, would be useful. Yeah.
What kind of dose do you recommend for omega-3s?
For which one?
Omega-3s.
Oh, okay, good question. So the two primary omega-3s are icosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid, EPA, DHA. And kind of a balance of those. There's science on one or the other all the time, but I just try to get a good ratio of them. Dosage-wise of those two actives, I would say 1 gram to 1.5 grams a day for an athlete. So when you look on a bottle, you got to be careful, because you'll see on the bottle it may say 1,000 milligrams, and you may say, "Oh, I'm covered." But the first pass distillation on omega-3s is very low. So you may have 300 milligrams of EPA and DHA in one soft gel. So you're going to need 3, 4, maybe 4 capsules a day. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's what you take. Some other fish oils are more concentrated, so you may only need 2, for instance. So 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams of EPA, DHA, would be useful in that. Again, creatine monohydrate, just pure creatine monohydrate. That 5 milligrams a day is generally okay. PA, 1,500 milligrams of mediator. Mediator is going to be, I think, the only company that's going to sell phosphatidic acid, to be honest, because it has a patent. So I think it's going to be pretty rigorous in defending its patent. And I don't have any problem with that. The company, ChemiNutra, is a good quality company. A lot of times when I formulate, I like to buy from Italy, I like to buy from Germany, because and France also, because the quality, the standards that they have is usually quite good. If I have to go to China for some things, not a problem, but you have to verify. You know, you just don't trust it. You got to really verify it. But and India, same way. India's gotten a little tweaky on nutrients too. Mineral orotates. A few companies make mineral orotates. They're kind of obscure. They're not as popular as like the mineral citrates or aspartates or something like that. But they're available. Taurine, of course, you can buy taurine all over the place too. Any other questions before? Yeah.
You ever recommend caffeine?
Oh, I didn't cover caffeine, but yeah, caffeine, and I have it in the book. I have some dosage recommendations in the book. Caffeine can be useful. It has some good science behind it. It has some applications. Again, I would not take it, I probably would only take it during if I was doing some max things and I wanted to see what my intensity was, or if I was in competition. I wouldn't take it during training. Again, minimal things during training to, other than any nutrient that you take during competition, before competition, for instance, you should always test during the training cycle, just so you, number one, make sure it's okay and it works, but number two, that again, it gives you the confidence and then it doesn't deter from your training results, because everybody's different. But in that case, caffeine-wise, if somebody uses a lot of caffeine, they may be a little bit less, maybe have a blunted caffeine response, so that may interfere with the result. But if you're not used to caffeine, and a little bit of caffeine, and I have the dose recommendations there, it can be beneficial.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
Got one from online too. Do you have any experience with Magtine, or any other mental sharpness?
Oh, Magtine. I think that's a Jarrow product. I think, if that's what they're referring to. It's for cognitive enhancement. I think it has some benefits. I think, yeah, it's called Magtine. It's by Jarrow. Jarrow is a nutraceutical company in Southern California. They're good quality. They do their own production. Their quality is good. So, yeah, I think it's okay to use. I don't know what effect it has in athletics, though. I haven't studied. I haven't looked at it for that. But I know it's for cognitive enhancement and things like that. Studying, maybe it may have a benefit to it as well. Yeah. Any other questions out there? Yeah.
If you got an athlete that's got a limited disposable income and you only had 3 options of ergogenic aids to get, what would you recommend? Top 3 of all the ones that you?
Oh, of the ones that we were talking about, like any of those or any of the, well, I think a good whey protein is a good investment. Again, interspersed with a good diet, with good proteins in the diet. I think creatine monohydrate, it's hard to say a little bit, but I know everybody, we're all on a budget. Everybody is, just endless amount of funds to go buy everything. But and some of these can be obviously could be combined. A lot of these are kind of new, so they're not really what I would call a complex. But I mean, you could take you could take TMG and add it to orotates and taurine, or add it to phosphatidic acid, or you can just do them separately. So, but I think starting with just basic things. Don't try to make it too difficult. On the neuromuscular side, the alpha GPC is good to have. It's pricey though, and so I work a lot with retail groups. I've worked a lot with Whole Foods Market for many years and other independents. The retail market, the chain from manufacturing to retail sales is everybody's got a hand in it. Okay, so that thing that actually costs $10 to make ultimately winds up probably costing $70. So when you buy a product in the store that's $70, it costs somebody $10 to make that. So why? Why 7 times markup? Well, the manufacturer's got to make a buck on it. Then they got to sell it to a distributor who makes a buck. Then the distributor, the company may have a broker and they make $1, and then the retailer doubles it. So the retail channel is, I usually get things online. I mean, I really do. I mean, I try to find the best deal. If it's a name brand, something I'm comfortable with, if it's $50 in the store and I can buy it for $35 online, then that's where I go. So that can cut the budget down too. If somebody says, look, I went down to the store and I looked at the price of this, and it's going to cost me $200 a month to do this. Well, then look online, because you'll save Most of the products are available online in some capacity, either direct from a company or through some kind of a distributor that sells online, at a discount. Yeah.
I know your background is with plant-based compounds.
Uh-huh.
Is there any value to those superfood type powdered supplements that, green supplements or fruits and greens like that, like almost like fruits and vegetables and the
Uh-huh.
powdered extra? Is there value to those? Or
They taste like lawn food, but other than that, I've used them before. Just for good overall health. I don't think they're going to be doing anything magic. They're a replacement. You can add them. They're concentrates. I prefer to use, like if I was going to make a smoothie or something, I would use organic fruits and vegetables in the smoothie. I would just try to. But in a pinch or something, obviously if you're at your office or in the gym or something or whatever, then you want to just make something up, they're fine. They're just not, even for just overall health, they're okay. First of all, we're talking about eating healthy and clean. All this stuff is great, but if your diet is lousy, you've really spent money and done stuff with that's wasting your time, because you need to get your base diet in line first. So always, and the same, it goes with the training-based diet. The supplements is the peak of this whole pyramid. It's that thing that allows you to accelerate the adaptive response, to get more out of the trainings, to recover better, to take it to the next level. But it's got to have a proper foundation. So, yeah. Any other questions out there? Yeah.
I know that you also recommend a particular type of creatine. I think it was German. You said you liked it a lot better than some of the other brands.
I think it's Creapure.
Creapure,
I think Creapure. There's not a lot of companies that make good creatine. I used a creatine by a company called Fansteel years ago, but Fansteel closed down their manufacturing. They're a German company. No, they were an American company. But I was also buying from a German company, and Creapure is a creatine. Jarrow, we were talking about Jarrow Magmind. I don't know about Magteam, but Magmind is the Jarrow product. Now it's coming back to me. I probably need some. Jarrow makes a product with the Creapure. Understand, creatine is no-brainer. When I bought creatine years ago, I paid, just starting material, I paid $100 a kilo for it. Okay, so it's what, $10 now or something at retail. So it tells you, or I don't forget what it is, but it's almost nothing. So it doesn't cost. Creatine is an easy buy. So that's back to the question of if I'm going to spend my money on something. You should get good quality creatine and not have to pay a lot for it. And you can go to the internet probably and get it there. If you don't have to get it right now, you can wait 3 days or something, then just get it that way. Yeah, it's okay. Any other questions? See if we have any more in here. I'm going to pass this over to Anatoly in a minute, and he's going to tell you a little bit, I think, about a creatine a little bit. See if we got anything more. If anything comes to mind, shout it out. And there's this PA material. It looks very interesting and very useful, I think. Hyaluronic acid. Yeah. So this hyaluronic acid, uracil is in the purine pyrimidine pathway. It's involved in RNA synthesis. There's two parts to making protein in the cell. DNA is obviously transferring the genetic information, the blueprint, if you will, to what are called ribosomes inside the cell, and then the RNA is ribosomes are part of the RNA, and the RNA are basically the builders. So the foreman with the blueprint is the DNA, the RNA is the builder, and so it tends to work on the whole enchilada there. So let's see, creatine, any more questions on weight loss or the AMPK? So you have to be a little careful on if you're doing an anabolic pathway and that you're not hanging out too much in the AMPK pathway, because they're kind of different. And for athletes, AMPK means energy starvation, basically, because then the body is burning fat and whatever, but it can also burn muscle. So if an athlete is doing a lot of intermittent fasting, for instance, or a more aerobic type, high-intensity aerobic exercise and not getting calories, or is taking a lot of the specific polyphenols in their diet that will activate AMPK and may blunt the mTOR pathway a little bit. So it's just to be aware of that somewhat as well. Let's see. Adaptogens, again, during mainly the winter months, possibly during periods of overreaching, they can be useful. There's a lot of good adaptogens. The ones like ashwagandha or holy basil, the tulsi there, a lot of those come out of India. The quality of that has kind of dropped over the years because the roots that they use for these materials, they used to be harvested at age 4 or 5 of the root, and now the Indians are harvesting in the 2 to 3 years. So if you do, you make sure you get a good quality brand. I think Sensoril is a brand of ashwagandha. Rhodiola has been around a while now too, so the quality of that kind of stayed the same. Let's see. Again, back to these, huperzine, rosemary, ginkgo. They can enhance this effect. They're good for studying too. So if you have students, they'll help with the comprehension as well, because they improve the brain activity also. Again, this too, good for athletics, good for students. So I think I'll just close with that. I would like to have Anatoly come up. He's going to talk a little bit about his experience with creatine, and I'm glad to have him talk. I'll just close. Creatine, I learned about creatine from the Ukraine and from Russia, so he's perfect and he's used it. So
I have lots of athletes. My athlete began use creatine about 95, 92, and 96, about 200 athletes. I have big experience. I want something recommend you about creatine. This I want say about 3 preparation period. If athlete use creatine first preparation period, after end of preparation period, reach peak condition, have good result, grow strength, grow everything, not have problem. Use good system, exercise, bad system, exercise, use good zone in intensity, not good zone, but reach peak condition, have good result, everything good. But second preparation period, athlete not use creatine. Training clean body, but this have lots of problem. Everybody body no won't use. Understand? No first result down, but body no good recovery, no won't use. Result not grow. Okay. Third preparation period, same. No use, same. Bad state. Body no won't work. Understand? After 3 peak condition 4, body recovery, body can work. Understand? This creatine, same drug. Sorry, this somebody like, not like, same drug. If body remember, body won't help. Creatine give an anabolic effect. Without no won't it, no work. You must this know. If you beginning use creatine, you must continue. Second preparation period, 3 preparation period, and more. You must know. Second and 3, body no work. Body cannot grow result. Understand? This big problem. You must know. Because first maybe 1, 2, 3 years, I think first peak condition everything good, have good result after 0. I worry. I think maybe I give bad program. Maybe need use other exercise, need other method development strength, need use a different zone intensity, blah. Understand? After I think no. If you give good program, good everything, you must continue use creatine. This is rule.
Okay.
Like somebody, not like somebody, but must use. And other problem. Problem, creatine, good for anabolic effect, everything good, no, but bad for kidney. Very bad for kidney, because in kidney have stone. This, okay, can use 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4, after have problem healthy, after have need surgery. This recommended need if use creatine, need use lots of water. Understand? Lots of water. No example. I know lots of coach, lots of elite athlete. He maybe every 15-30 minutes drink water. If drink water, clean kidney, clean body. This you must know two way. Sorry.
Good. Sorry. Okay. Did you guys get that? Okay. Okay, so what he said was that if you use creatine, to continue to use it, but that it has a caveat that if you don't get enough hydration, that you're prone to kidney stones. And so to increase your fluid intake. And that goes with a lot of things. And actually, as we age, maybe we don't drink as much fluids. That's why people get kidney stones, not necessarily from creatine, but from calcium and other types of products that can create stones. So if your athletes are using creatine, to just make sure that you stay with it. Okay, that was we were talking about cycling in, cycling out. Maybe that when you stop using it for a while, the body doesn't catch up, and you have a bad result. So it's just to stay on it in maybe a small dose, 5 grams a day or something, and make sure you hydrate fully to flush the kidneys. Okay. Okay. Is there any more questions? Are there any more questions from you? All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I wish you a great conference. Thank you.